award-winning national security reporter, security investigative reporter for TV, radio, and the print media. Kimberly is the senior foreign policy advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy. She's a TV correspondent at CW6 News San Diego, as well as One America News Network. Her website, thekdreport.com. And a reminder, know how to spell that last name, okay? D-V-O-R-A-K. She's streaming live at periscope.com and Facebook. Hey, Kimberly.
Well, when we think that over the weekend we're going to get a break and all heck breaks loose, and it looks exactly like what happened over in the Middle East, and we're watching some pretty horrific fighting take place in northern Syria at the expense of the Kurds.
Well, let me tell you, I think very disturbingly is the fact that you are reporting as predicted that Russia has brokered a deal for Kurdish forces to partner with Syria against Turkey. Wow, yeah. It's getting bigger and bigger, isn't it?
It is, and you can throw Iran into that mix as well. You've got the complexity issue factor here is tenfold, and when the U.S. typically steps away from a situation, someone always comes in to fill that void. Now, we've known that Russia and Vladimir Putin has been working with Assad for a long time. It's been, an ally of the embattled president there. But now you're seeing Iran kind of state that they're going to not put up with the Turkish invasion. That, in essence, and we talked about this last week as well. They're going to take over a huge chunk of northern Syria, and that chunk is 320 miles long by 20 miles deep. And in that region are Kurdish people, the majority of whom have just got done fighting ISIS, and they are trying to start to rebuild after the horrific situation that ISIS did to that part of the world for a few years. So basically, they're living in conditions where there's no infrastructure, and now they're having to get up and move. And my sources I've been talking to now on the ground over there, they've said that they have no choice but to move south, and the situation's very dire.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get, what did you say about the south?
They're moving south. So all of currently the numbers are roughly 197, 200,000 people are now displaced again. And so they have no choice but to go south, because we know Turkey will not take any more refugees. So their only choice in the matter here is to go south and hope that President Assad does not, let loose fighters on their behalf. But I think, and I asked the question about possible genocide and what that may mean for the Kurds there in the region. And, talking with Steve over at Partners Foundation, they're the organization that's really helping the Kurds right now. And he said that he doesn't necessarily think that that's going to happen, but as with a dictator like Assad, and the fact that he's been at war for 9 years or more, and so they just don't know what to expect. And plus, they've got all of these families that just starting to kind of get back on their feet are now forced to flee a region and go towards uncertainty.
I think we're getting a lot of negative suggestions, might be the word, from the mainstream media.
Well, I think the mainstream media is, it's interesting, because when we first started this issue with Syria under President Obama, a lot of the mainstream media, they wanted the president to go to Congress, and Congress decided they didn't want to have any part in this war. And so they threw it back on President Obama. That's continued under Trump. But now they want to take some sort, they want to punish President Trump some way to stop the invasion that's currently going on. And this is the trouble when you don't have actual, war authorization acts, because in essence, you have a NATO ally of ours, kind of, sort of. I always use that in quotes because, they don't really like us all that much, and it's, the feeling's mutual, I think. But it's one for all for one. We're supposed to be on Turkey's side with this, but you're seeing a NATO nation also come down and take over northern parts of a country that belongs to Syria. And it's an area that the Kurds were hoping to have this autonomous, region, so they could just kind of stay away from everybody else and get their lives back together. And now everything has been upended. So you've got, a lot of conflicting stories that are coming out. But what we do know is that there are roughly 200,000 displaced Kurds headed south, and they are headed south towards Damascus, and they do not know what they're heading into with President Assad right now.
Obama, he drew that red line, right, regarding the use of chemical weapons by Assad.
Yeah.
And then kind of backed down on it. So Trump, comes in and kind of acts like he knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But not getting the credit for, when he did that speech just recently, I think it was in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And he was describing the bodies coming back and everything and how many wars we get into. And I tell people, it seems like the Democrats, all right, they're always saying, hey, too many wars, get out of there, get out of there, get out of there, get out of there. And then you do it. Well, what are you doing? Why are you leaving those people helpless?
Yeah.
You just can't win.
Well,
if you do it, if you don't.
Exactly. And in this situation, real lives are actually on the line. And that's the difference. In Washington, D.C. here, it's okay for them to play their little political games and TV and scream down about A, B, or C. But what's happening in the Middle East is real. And it's real for a lot of people. And, for, members of Congress and both political parties, to be frank, to, not really, look at consequences of when, of things that they say on TV, policies that they don't know anything about, not understanding what's going on in the region, and not actually feeling the pulse of the American people who want these wars to end just as much as the people that are in that region. You have to remember that the people fighting in all this, these are just kind of the higher ups of the military. The majority of the Kurds, the ethnic Christians, the Yazidis, and all of the other people in that region, they're not for war. They don't want to fight war. They just want to get on and live their life so their kids can get an education, and they can go to soccer games on the weekend, and that they can grow up in a peaceful environment and build something, for their country down the road. Right now, those people have no say in what's going on. And you've got people in this country going on TV saying, we're going to do sanctions against Turkey and it's going to be all right. Well, for the people sitting in Syria, northern Syria in particular, that it's not going to be all right for them. It's not going to be all right for them for a long time, because their country has been completely obliterated. And we're talking like no water, no running water. I mean, these people have had to rebuild up from that. And now you have Turkey coming in, and under, the guidelines of NATO, we have no choice in this country but to side with Turkey. And I think that, people need to really take a look at President Erdogan. We've talked about him for 10 years or more on this program, talking about what a brutal dictator he is, and that he was moving towards becoming the caliph, and he wanted to present a caliphate, and he wants to be the one that takes over Syria. And if you think that he's going to stop at the northern part of Syria, that's not the case. He'll come in and take over. You just have to look at history, and you have to look at some of the past statements that this dictatorial president has put out there, and he would have no problem committing genocide. He does not think what happened with the Armenians was genocide. So, you're looking at somebody that is a NATO ally. Again, I have to stress this. This is a country that the United States, under law, must support. So we either need to figure out how to get Assad, to start, working with his own countrymen so they can kind of calm down, get back to some sort of normalcy, and that'll take years, of course, but some sort of normalcy, so we can deal with Erdogan and Turkey, because Turkey is overstepping at this point, and they've been watching all this chaos over the last few years, and they've been just, alrighty, time's right for us to go in and do this. So it's going to be hard for the United States, and it's going to be hard for the diplomats to kind of go through and work on this, but they really are going to have to go after Turkey on this, because it's, what's going on is simply not acceptable. And not to mention the fact that these people have nothing. Their need of food and water, medicine, baby formula, They have organic, rides of trucks, people just taking them south. I mean, they're doing everything they can amongst themselves. And the Trump administration offered $50 million in humanitarian aid, which, Partners Organization said that, that's like nothing. That's not really even going to get to that level, because by the time it filters down and goes through the Syrian government, and that they won't see much, if anything, of that humanitarian aid that the president here has promised. So there's a lot of, it's kind of in the weeds type of stuff that you have to get around when you look at these situations. But the pictures on the ground, and seeing that these people have their lives upended one more time, is just another, sad commentary on the United States and the foreign policy, that we just don't seem to be committed to one foreign policy or the other. And it's about time somebody in Washington, D.C., picks up the things as, look, we're going to either authorize these attacks or we're not going to authorize them. So we'd all love to see the AUMF revoked, and let's start over and let's start building our foreign policy between each country in the region, so we don't see another Syria. We don't see another slaughter of the Kurds. We don't see what's going on in northern Iraq with the Yazidis, who were completely, almost nearly wiped out. And this is due to politics in the West. And there's really no getting around the fact that we provide all those weapons, and as does Germany and France and Britain. All these weapons they're using, these people get from the West. So it's a very dire and a very sad commentary of where we are as a country, and getting these stories out, getting that help right now that they need.
Interesting that during his tenure as Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, right?
Yeah.
He was hoping to revise the U.S. mandate to enable U.S. forces to be used against Iran in Syria. And some people are saying the plan was strategically sound. That was rejected by Trump.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of responses also on our Facebook.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
There's one that, if I could find it on my screen here, I was going to ask you, but actually it's disappeared. About this fake video, I think he said it was ABC. One of the responses said that they were showing some fake video of bombings or whatever going on there.
Well,
it was actually video from 1977, I think.
Yeah, we get this all the time. The chemical attacks, and that you get pictures put out there. We've seen it, and we've seen, again, our politicians in this country fall for things of this nature. So, again, when you're looking at the situation, the best thing that I find is always going to the source and talking to people that are on the ground and know what's going on there. And so that's what I did. And literally just finished up the conversation before I had to get on the radio here with you. I wanted to know the latest of what's going on. Again, these are facts that are on the ground, that roughly 200,000 people are displaced. Oh, one other point that I didn't know about that was just very interesting was the fact that in Kobani there are 5,000 orphans from the war against ISIS. That these 5,000 orphans are sitting in Kobani, and now presumably they're right back in the middle of a war zone. So what there's been no word from the Turkish side that they will, come in and take care and help care for these orphans that are sitting essentially on the border with Syria and Syria. So there are stories like this all over the northern region, and the fact that we're allowing Erdogan to just continue to move in and take over towns. At last count, they had captured 20 villages in the area. They continue to move south. There's prisons that are ultimately going to go up, and the ISIS members and the family members of ISIS are going to be out and about to wreak whatever kind of havoc there is. I do think the U.S. military, and I also do think that the president, if it gets to that, I know that they've moved some of the hardcore ISIS fighters to different locations that they have not disclosed for good reason. But I do not think that you're going to see a president watch this happen for very long. because it's just, I mean, these pictures are just going to increase, and we're going to start seeing them on the front pages of papers and on the evening news. And when that happens, general, Americans, we are compassionate people, and we'll start speaking up and trying to get our Congress members and Senate to stand up and do something about this situation, because it's these people deserve to live, and they do have they're trying to pick up the pieces, and once they do this, it's something else happens. So I think that where the change has to come, though, I think is the president is going to have to go in, and if it's harsh sanctions or whatever, but he's going to have to go in and deal with Turkey, and hopefully the NATO members will come up with a solution to either kick NATO or kick Turkey out of NATO so they're no longer alliance, or just completely neuter them to where they really don't have much power or support, because they are capable fighters. They do have they actually have the biggest and most powerful fighting force in that region. So they, forget about the, Saudi Arabia and all those countries. Turkey has a capable fighting force. So it could get really, really ugly really fast.
Hey, Kimberly, going to take a break. When we come back, remind me, I want to ask you about our military installations that are in Turkey. I think we talked about it before. I think we have an air base there and some other stuff. I want to talk to you about that when we come back. The one and only Kimberly Dvorak, Dvorak. Her website is thekdreport.com, and she's streaming live right now on periscope.com and Facebook. Later you'll find it on YouTube. We'll be right back. Across some stuff here about the Pentagon rejecting the suggestion that the U.S. remove its nuclear weapons, and I think it's certainly INCIRLIC.
In Syria, in Syria, yeah.
Syria. Wow, it was so close this time. So there I go again.
Yeah.
And then they have the U.S. air operations, Central Asia, Middle East. Same true of the U.S. dependence on Turkish naval bases.
Yeah.
I don't know why we would, unless it's where we dock. It's the only place to dock or something.
Yeah.
But,
well, it is a warm water port. Russia would like to have that warm water port as well, but I digress.
Right.
Yeah, I digress. I just kind of want to leave this because I know we just have a few minutes left here. So far, the civil war in Syria has approximately 6.3 million displaced people. 6.3 million people. A lot of those people are in Turkey. That there's virtually no aid going into that region right now, and that one of the biggest tragedies here, when we look at this, again, another situation in the Middle East, is that this is further, just acknowledgement to the West that this is the death of pluralism. Turkey used to be a secular country. They used to, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, kids were going to college. They, could go to McDonald's. They were westernized. You could travel there, for crying out loud. And what you see going on in Syria here is again, it's kind of the death of secularism, and the continued wars in other parts of the region, in Libya and in North Africa as well. What you're seeing is we used to be able to travel to these regions, and the Muslims and the Christians and the Jewish people and other people who probably weren't even religious whatsoever, they all mingled. They went to school, they went to work together, and they were thriving as best as they could. But when we see this again, what we're seeing now, again, I guess a lot of people will say this when you look at what's going on in mainstream media. The country is polarized. You're either on the left or you're on the right. And on these issues overseas where life and death is really at stake, you're seeing these people, they're either Muslim and they're either Sunni or they're Shia. And if you're anybody else, forget about it. We're not going to look after those people. So that's been the real casualty that nobody talks about. And that is very important to remind people about, because, had America not, put red lines, and had America just allowed Syria just to be kind of, work out its own problems. Of course, we can't, hindsight's 2020, but we can't go back. But we can look to see that maybe next time if something like this comes up, what the consequences are down the road. And right now, the consequences are the Kurds that are living up there, who are now having to pick up everything they have, which isn't much, and go in search of looking for a place to sleep for the night, water, food, blankets, things of those nature. They just went through this. They're going through this again, and they are going south to Damascus on this.
Hey, Kimberly, before we run out of time, I noticed that you had mentioned Partners Relief.
Yeah.
Is that an organization
Yeah.
where people can get involved?
Yeah, go to their website and they're actively working. They've got teams on the ground actively. They were actually shot at over the last several hours, so they're having to pull back a little bit more to protect their team that's on the ground there. But they are helping with whatever they get. The donations certainly would help them out, and they're providing, all of this is not a moneymaker for them. All of the donated's going to help these.
Website by any chance?
It would be Partners Relief and Development I think it's a .org. I could be wrong, sorry, but I think it's a .org.
Let's do it, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So and I put it up here on the Facebook feed here as well. So if anybody's interested in getting out there, and also social media, get the stories out on social media. This is how we make changes in this country. So, alrighty.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Facebook, it's Dvorak, Dvorak. We'll be right back.